Hey guys, it's your girl Samantha from Black Nation News, and this morning, I wanted to talk about critical race theory and wanted to play a clip of Matt Gaetz, who is currently, I believe, under investigation for crimes against a minor, sexual crimes against a minor. But I just wanted you guys to hear some of his racist rhetoric as we talk about more about the critical race theory and it being in American schools and just how hard the racists of America are trying to bury the truth of American history. So we're going to play this clip and then we're going to discuss a little bit more what he's saying here.
Right now, our military is being targeted by the Biden Department of Defense. Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer is an American patriot who should have been promoted, not relieved of his command. And the thing about Lohmeyer, he was punished for telling the truth. He brought forward scholarship about Marxism and the danger that it does, a message that many of our young people need to hear today. And he was right that critical race theory has no place in our military, no place in our schools, no place in the greatest country that has ever existed in all of human history. Any program that teaches us to hate our fellow Americans because of their identity should be defunded, abolished, and never allowed again.
So I didn't know that teaching American history, the true American history would teach hate. I always think it's interesting that every time we teach the truth about America is considered teaching hate. I remember years ago I was on Facebook and I believe I was in some group or on some post and I was telling people how I teach my children the truth about American history as far as like slavery and white supremacy and racism and what this country was created out of and created off of the backs of my children and my own ancestors. And every time I spoke out and said things like that, white people, if they were able to be on this post, because I, didn't block them or something, they would usually ask me, like, why are you teaching your kids hate? Or that's teaching your children hate. For one, it's not your fucking job to tell me what to teach my children. For two, why is it teaching them hate? To teach the truth. Maybe that's something more you need to worry about, white person, than I need to worry about. That's not my problem that your history is so fucked up and all the shit that you did that you automatically go to these people are going to hate us when they know the truth. That's not my problem. So I'm really loving the whole discussion of critical race theory. And I know it's not going to go anywhere, even though the GOP and all the racists in this country are trying to bury it for so many reasons. One, because of the wonderful world of technology. It just allows us to finally control our own narratives and finally tell our own stories and finally tell our own truths. So even if they buried it and stopped it from being in the schools, Black parents have options. They can take their kids out of the schools. Even if their kids stayed in the schools, they can still teach them the truth when they get home. They can create our own. We can create our own schools, buy land, and put up our own schools. There's so many other things we can do to combat the fact that this country still does not want the truth in the schools. And another reason, the main reason I feel that this country, the government, does not want the truth in the schools, because once they do have that real truth out there and they can't deny it, like they're really teaching what they really did to African Americans, it would be an undisputable fact that they do need to cut those checks and pay us reparations. Even though we already know they need to, I feel like they just keep trying to bide that time and put it off as long as they can so they can say it was a long time ago. I don't care how long it was. It just means your price tag is bigger. That's what it means to me. It means that the job that has already been done to build the wealth and build this country has just gotten steeper and higher of a cost that you have to reimburse to African Americans for all the free labor and as well as all the atrocities that we have had to endure while living in this country. Just the fact that we have to go on living in poverty for so many generations and decades and centuries because we have yet to be made whole, that in and of itself is needing compensation just for the emotional and the physical distress of being African American in this country. Like, you look at the country now and they talk about what's happening in our neighborhoods, like Chicago and all the murders and, the gang violence and all the black people in jail. And they try to act like we just did this to ourselves. And it's like, no, that's all repercussions of what happened to us in the very beginning. If they didn't bomb communities like the one in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I just recently heard about a Slocum massacre that happened in Texas. And I haven't seen all the communities yet, but I will be doing my research. But I've heard that there's been plenty of black communities that were destroyed because Whitey was mad that African Americans were living in a successful, thriving economy that they built for themselves from the ground up. A lot of this happened within one generation of having been enslaved, and then next thing you know, they're extremely successful business owners. That's just black excellence. That's how amazing black people are. We're talented, we are resourceful, we're skilled. And so it's really not surprising to me that we could build something like that when we had started with nothing, just by the virtue of us sticking together and being amazing and being black. So with all those massacres and everything going on, this is why we now don't have the wealth that we're supposed to have in our communities. And so you have like immigrants who come over in the 1980s trying to say, this is what I was able to do. I don't give a shit about your story. And even if it was like one African out of a lot of them that didn't do much of anything, like, how is your one individual story important? It's not. No one cares, because for every one African or one Hispanic or one Asian that came over here and did something decent, of course, not only did they get help that they did not earn or deserve, they didn't earn it or deserve it, but I can name about 10 black people, African Americans, who are doing the same things, if not more. So, and that's with us having to go against an entire system created by our own government to keep us oppressed. So you're telling me that you did all this great stuff and you didn't even have to endure half of the obstacles that African Americans have to deal with. So that's not an accomplishment that African Americans give a shit about. It's like, okay, good for you that you were able to get yourself a business degree and go work at an investment banking place, and you were unbothered. I mean, by your own accounts, you did not have to deal with any kind of white supremacist system. You just floated along and you were successful. Cookies and kudos to you. My story is a lot harder, a lot different. And the reality is I had to deal with a lot of racism in my lifetime. We're not even going to mention the sexism. But I had to deal with a lot of racism in my lifetime that I could have allowed me to hold me back, but I still was able to accomplish getting my MBA and also having a very thriving, successful business, as well as owning several parcels, several properties of land. So again, your story is not something to write home about when you're an immigrant coming over here, benefiting off of what my ancestors built, benefiting off of what my ancestors have fought for, benefiting off of programs that were created for my ancestors as a form of reparations that ended up being given out to everyone, and mostly white women. So again, no, we're not impressed. And so critical race theory definitely should be something that is discussed in the schools, something that is discussed in our military history. We, as an American, if we really want to be a better country than what we are right now, because right now it's actually studies that's been done that it actually costs the country more to be racist towards African Americans than if they just do the right thing. So it might behoove America if this country doesn't want to completely implode upon itself and just completely fail, to do the right thing, because where they're going is not up. It's like you can clearly see this country is in complete free for all. Like, we have a hot mess of a real estate. People are being priced out. They cannot afford homes. The government is throwing money at every white problem that there is, because of course they are the main recipients of government handouts. So you have the Wall Street getting all kinds of money from the Federal Reserve. There's no cap on it. You have interest rates as low as they've ever been. There's probably no cap on that either. You have white people getting all kinds of programs like the PPP loans, the EIDL loan for small businesses. And I just recently read that now the government has come up with like billions of dollars for relief, quote unquote, relief for renters and landlords. So I guess the people who aren't paying their rent or their mortgages are now going to get more free money to pay their rent and their mortgages. And so you can see how the white government just does not allow whitey to fail. Instead of just sitting back and letting the economy do what it's supposed to do and correct itself, they just keep printing money and throwing it out to their whitey, family members and friends to make sure that they don't fail. So I'm sure they're going to come up with some scheme to make sure that whitey will also be able to afford their little starter home and have more whitey bratty kids. So yeah, so anyways, I don't have a whole lot of hope that critical race theory is going to make it into our school system. I kind of feel like it will, because they're not going to have a choice. People just know too much now, so it's almost like things that are happening, one, they're by design. God has prophesied all of this. It's in the Bible, and God does not make mistakes. But, it's kind of like inevitable that the truth will reign supreme. It will come out, because it already is coming out. And people are getting their news more from social media than they get from these cable news outlets. Most people I don't think people even have news, like the cable boxes in their house anymore. So it's like most of the younger people are online. I know I get my news from online. I don't watch any cable news or whatever, like Fox and all that crap. So, it's like because most people are online a lot, you are once more able to control your narrative, just like I can with this channel I have. I could create a website like other Black media has done, and make sure that my voice is continued to be heard, and people will find it, because whatever Black people do, everyone follows. That's just the reality of it. Whatever we put our mind to or wherever our interests lie, everybody follows it. So we're going to keep pushing. We're not going to take a break, because white supremacy never does. And we're going to keep pushing to make sure the truth is out there, the truth is told. That is like the minimum that we can do for our ancestors, is make sure we honor them by telling their stories and never allowing anyone to forget what happened to our ancestors and all that they had to endure. We will absolutely not whitewash it and pretend like happily ever after happened after Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream. We're not doing that. We are going to pay homage to our ancestors by letting people know this is the truth. This is what happened. There was a massacre in this town. There was a massacre in this town. And these things really were real things that happened to my people. And that's just reality. And if you come out of that with some hatred towards certain people, maybe that's how things should be going. Maybe there should be some hatred. Maybe there should be some concern as to why no one was held accountable for those crimes. We have to at some point, we're going to have to let, fate go as it may. And I just don't see how what this country is doing right now is going to be sustainable. Like, as far as trying to, you can tell how the truth is just bubbling up to the surface, and they have done so much. And I mean, white supremacists and racist white folks and our racist government, they've done so much to try to cover up things. They just try to cover up. They burn things. They hide things. No one talks about things. They threaten people, like, you better not talk, about this, that this ever happened. Do you really think that's going to work? You really think you can hide an entire nation of racism? You think that that's never going to come out to pass? Like, the truth is never going to come out. Really? You really think every person you talk to, or you thought you scared but Jesus out of these black people, they were never going to talk about the crimes that were brought against them? Seriously? You must have the wrong people on your mind, because black Americans, we don't play around. We will continue to fight. We will not stop. So fuck the critical race theory if it gets in and out of the schools. My children are homeschooled, so black parents can do what they want. I suggest they teach their children the truth, because it doesn't benefit them to keep lying to them or withholding information, as we can see with Black Wall Street and that Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre. There was generations and generations of black people never talked about it. It could have been out of fear. It could have been out of just wanting to move on. Who knows? But they never talked about it. And where did that get them? Now you have a 107-year-old great-grandmother in D.C. trying to fight for reparations for what happened 100 years ago. And it's like, where could they have been? How much further could they have been in their fight if they would have fought from the very beginning? Like, if they would have been like, this is unacceptable, we are suing the government, we are not going to let people forget, we're going to talk as much as we're going to shout this shit from the rooftops, let everybody know what happened to us. Because back then they didn't have social media, they didn't have, smartphone cameras. Things were still being able to be dictated by the white media. So the newspapers, people said things were cut out of newspapers, so you could never know about the story, that even if the newspapers did try to tell the story. So the only thing you have at that point is oral history, like teaching it orally, like passing down those stories from one generation to the next. And as I was watching that 107-year-old, probably a great grandmother, I'm not sure if she has children, but as I was watching her testimony in Congress, as she discussed what happened to her during the Tulsa, Oklahoma riots, I just wondered to myself, like, I wonder if she's told these stories to her descendants. Even if she didn't have children, did she tell her nieces and nephews? Did she teach other children in the neighborhood what once happened here? Because she had a very vivid memory, and I just really felt concerned, like, when she dies, will this story die with her? Or are there people like aunts, cousins, nieces, nephews, children of hers that can recount what happened to their relative, what she had to endure, what she had to live through, and how their lives are impacted to this day because of what happened? So you can't discount the power of words. You can't discount that. You can't discount the power of storytelling. And in the African tribes, we used to have griots who had these amazing memories, and they were trained to do that, to just repeat stories from one generation to the next so that we would never lose our history and our truth. Because without your past, how do you know where you're going? Without your history, how do you know who you truly are? How do you know what your identity even is? Like, you're walking around into a room of white people thinking, kumbaya, everyone loves me, and they're looking at you like you're crazy. You might even end up getting killed. So you might want to know your history and what you're dealing with here. And that's all I want to say on that. So I'll be, of course, discussing this topic in numerous videos. But this is just something that, I saw that video of Matt Gaetz, whatever is, however you pronounce that last name. Press the like button if you feel like you like this video, you learned anything from it. Like, subscribe, share, pass it on, take something from it. Teach your children the truth about American history. It's on YouTube. It's on Google. And have a great day. Bye.